Growing your own food doesn't have to mean breaking your back every single day. You don't need to be out there constantly pulling weeds, watering until your hose runs dry, or completely starting from scratch after every single harvest. The trick is choosing the right crops, plant the right things, and you're setting yourself up to clip leaves, pick veggies, and pull in a harvest for weeks, months, or honestly, even years off a single planting. Some of these guys will totally forgive you if you forget to water them. Others actually hit their stride in the blistering summer heats, right when everything else is burning up. And then there are the ones that bounce right back after you cut them, practically taking care of them, multiplying on their own, and coming back season after season. In this video, we're counting down find of the best low maintenance vegetables you can grow. We'll start with the ones you only have to plant once a season for non-stop harvests, and we'll work our way down to a perennial powerhouse that'll keep feeding you for decades. Our number one spot is the absolute ultimate, put in the work once, harvest forever crop. Let's kick things off with number find. Green onions. Number find, green onions. This might just be the absolute way to kick off a lazy gardener setup. Honestly, you don't even have to buy seed. Next time you're chopping green onions for dinner, save those white base with the little roots still attached at the bottom. Drop them into small glass with just enough water covering the roots and set it somewhere bright. In a matter of days, you'll see fresh green shoots popping right out of the center. Give it a week and you're already harvesting another batch. That's exactly why they fit this list perfectly. No replanting necessary. The root system stays alive and just keeps pushing up new growth. Now, if you keep them in water forever, they'll eventually run out of gas since there are no nutrients left. But pop those rooted bases into some potting soil and they'll stay healthy and keep churning out fresh onions for a good long while. They also take up practically zero space. They grow straight up, have a tiny root footprint, and you'll never have to mess with staking, trellising, or pruning. Just give them some decent light, keep the dirt fairly damp, and snip off what you need. Even if you completely space out and forget to water them for a bit, established green onions usually bounce right back once they get a drink. Pro tip, don't chop them flush with the dirt. Leave an inch or two of green so the plant can still photosynthesize and fuel the next batch. They won't live for decades, but getting a bunch of free harvests out of kitchen scraps with zero effort. That's the definition of low maintenance. 4. Bush beans. Number 4, bush beans. A lot of folks dread build trellises. Bush beans are your easy way out. Unlike pole varieties that want to climb to the moon, these guys stay nice, low, and compact, totally supporting them. You can skip the tall stakes and the complicated string webs. Just sow the seeds right in the garden bed, give them sun and water, and as the soil starts to dry, they'll form neat little bushes and start throwing out flowers. Getting started is a breeze, and once they're going, your only real job is picking the food. A single planting will push out wave after wave of beans over a few weeks. The trick to keeping them going is harvesting on time. Snap off those pods when they're a good size, but still crisp and young. If you let too many get old and tough on the plant, it flips a switch, redirects its energy to mature those seeds, and stops flowering. Basically, the more consistently you pick, the more it produces. They don't need any weird pruning, and they don't take up a massive amount of vertical space. Plus, their leafy canopy shades the dirt around them, which chokes out weeds and traps moisture around the roots. They still need a drink, especially when they're flowering and setting pods, but they aren't divas about it. Toss a thin layer of mulch around the base to keep the soil damp, and you won't have to water nearly as much. They're only around for one season, but you get all the heavy hitting production of a bean crop without the headache of managing a massive vertical jungle. Fir tree, Swiss chard. Number 3, Swiss chard. With those gorgeous, bright neon stems, chard looks like a delicate showpiece, but it's actually one of the toughest greens you can stick in the dirt. Most leafy greens are ridiculously picky about the weather. Give them a hot day and they bolt. Hit them with a cold snap and they just give up. Swiss chard shakes off both. It keeps pumping out leaves through the summer heat and handles a light freeze way better than most tender greens. Because it adapts so well, you aren't stuck constantly tearing out dead plants and replanting every time the forecast shifts. But the real magic is how it recovers. New leaves shoot up from the very center, fanning outward as they get bigger. When it's time to harvest, just snap off the large outer leaves and leave the middle intact. The plant affects even flinch. It just keeps replacing what you took. One solid chard plant can feed you for months off a single sowing. It does like decent soil with some organic matter and steady watering, but you can automate a lot of that by throwing down some organic mulch. That'll trap the moisture, block the weeds, and keep the soil temperature stable. If your summers are brutally hot, give it a lit afternoon shade, keeps the leaves tender, and cuts down on your watering duties. Even those bright, crunchy stalks are totally edible, so almost everything you pick has value. It's not totally hands-off, but it's way more forgiving than your average lettuce, rolling with the weather punches and endlessly regenerating. Just plant it, pick from the outside, and let the core do its thing. 22. Kale. Number 22. Kale. This stuff doesn't just put up with the cold. A light frost actually completely upgrades the flavor, making the leaves milder and a whole lot sweeter. While everything else in the garden is tapping out for the winter, kale is perfectly happy standing out there waiting for your harvest basket. If you hate run out to cover your plants every time the temperature dips, this is the crop for you. It's also surprisingly forgiving if you mess up your watering schedule. Once those roots dig in deep, the plant isn't going to keel over just because the topsoil got a little dusty for a day or two. Obviously, keep it consistently watered means faster growth and softer leaves, but you definitely don't need to baby it daily. Just like chard, kale is a cut and come again superstar. Start by snapping off the older, bigger leaves at the bottom and leave the crown and the tiny new ones in the center alone. The plant just stretching taller, throwing out fresh rings of foliage. If you're just grabbing a handful here and there, a single plant will hook you up for a really long time. That's what makes it so much better than greens you have to yank out by the roots after one harvest. You get to skip all the tilling and replanting. The only real hassle is keeping an eye out for caterpillars and bugs when it's young. But honestly, if you just throw some insect netting over the bed right after you plant it, you bypass all that headache entirely. In warmer zones, kale might even power right through the winter and keep producing the next year. Even if you only get one season out of it, the constant harvest from one single root system make it incredible. Kale doesn't force you to start over. You just have to avoid chopping off its ability to bounce back. Okra. Number okra. A time the summer heat makes everything eligible, okra is just hit its stride. This plant absolutely thrives on blazing sun, high temp, and long summer days. While your lettuce is turned bitter and wilting, okra is shooting for the sky, popping out gorgeous flowers and setting pods. Because it loves the heat so much, you don't have to waste time rigging up shade cloths or forming plant sepia during a heat wave. Once it gets established, that deep taproot makes it way more drought resistant than your shallow-rooted veggies. You'll still want to give a drink if things stay bone, dry for weeks, especially when it's loaded with pods, but it absolutely hates sitting in continuously soggy dirt. A deep, heavy watering followed by let it dry out works way better than sprinkling it a little bit every day. Okra is also incredibly low maintenance when it comes to pruning. It naturally grows straight up, churning out leaves, blooms, and pods without you ever needing to shape it. If you live somewhere super windy, tossing a stake next to it isn't a bad idea, but otherwise it does the heavy lifting itself. Your biggest chore is just keeping up with the picking. In the heat of summer, okra pods inside quickly overnight. You snap them off when they're small and tender. Wait to hang too long, and they turn tough, fibrous, edible spikes. Plus, picking them constantly signals the plant to keep flowering. So, low maintenance okra doesn't mean ignoring the harvest. It just means you can skip all the tedious pruning, trellising, and heat stress management. Just set it up right and watch it crank out food right when your other plants require the most effort. 10. Malabar spinach. Number 10. Malabar spinach. If you're tired of watching your leafy greens give up the ghost by midsummer, you need this vine in your life. Regular spinach is strictly a cool weather crop. The second it gets hot, it bolts, turns bitter, and the harvest is over. Malabar spinach flips the script. It's a totally diff-climbing vine that absolutely craves intense heat and heavy humidity. The hotter it gets, the faster it takes off. That means no more succession planting, trying to squeeze out a few more greens before the summer sun destroys them. Stick it in the ground once when it warms up, and you're eating fresh greens for months. It also saves a ton of ground space and weeding by growing vertically. You don't need a fancy trellis. Just a chain link fence, a bamboo pole, or a tight string will do. Give it something to grab and it'll spiral right up. Harvesting is dead simple too. You just snip off the tender growing tips and the newer leaves. The crazy part: every time you pinch off a growing tip, the vine splits and shoots out side branches, giving you double the harvest points next time. The more you eat, the bushier and more productive it gets. Those thick, succulent leaves act like armor, help it handle dry days. Way better than thin greens. Throw some mulch around the roots and you'll barely have to water it. In frost-free zones, this vine acts like a perennial. In colder spots, the winter will take it out, but a single seed still gets you a massive haul all summer long. And if you let a few of those berries to drop the dirt, it usually seeds itself for next year. While other greens need constant rescuing from the sun, Malabar spinach uses that heat as jet fuel. 9. Cherry tomatoes. Number 9. Altatare usually have a reputation for being high-maintenance divas, but that's mostly because of the varieties people choose. Those giant beefsteaks take forever to ripen. Their branches get insanely heavy, and after waiting weeks, one bad rainstorm splits the fruit wide open. Cherry tomatoes are a completely different ball game. The fruit is tiny, so it ripens super fast, and the plant just pumps out cluster after cluster. If a couple of tomatoes get munched by a bug, who cares? The rest of the harvest is perfect fine. You aren't gambling your entire summer's effort on 3 massive tomatoes. One solid cherry tomato plant will feed you a steady stream of fruit for months on end. You plant it once, and you're picking food all season long. The trick to keep them totally hands-off, though, is setting up your infrastructure on day one. Put your tomato cage, stake, or trellis in the dirt while the seedling is still tiny. If you wait until it's a sprawling, mess-covered root, you're going to break branches and lose your mind trying to untangle it. Do it right once, and the plant just steadily climbs. Slap some mulch over the root zone to lock in the water, and always water the dirt, not the entire plant. You do want to keep the soil moisture some steady because wild swings from bone. Dry to soaking wet can still split the little guys. While they aren't quite as drought-proof as rosemary or okra, their speed and sheer volume make them incredibly reliable. With cherry tomatoes, you aren't fighting to force the plant to produce. Your only real job is keeping up with the massive amount of food it throws at you. 8. Sweet potatoes. Number 8. Sweet potatoes. These plants are incredible because they don't just feed you. They actively do your garden chores for you. Once they get established, the vines absolutely explode outward, throwing a thick blanket of leaves over every inch of bare dirt. That dense shade blocks out the sun, which means weeds don't stand a chance. Less weeding equals less work for you. That living mulch also locks the moisture into the soil, keeping the intense summer sun from baking the dirt dry, which cuts way down on your watering schedule. Most veggies require you to haul in bags of mulch. Sweet potatoes essentially grow their own. Once they settle in, they're wildly drought-resistant. Their strong root systems hunt for water across a huge area, so while you definitely want to give them consistent water while the tubers are swelling up, you won't be standing over them with a watering can every day. Here's the absolute best part, though. You get two totally different crops from one plant. Obviously, you get the big starchy tubers underground. But all summer long, you can harvest the tender vine tips and young leaves to cook up exactly like leafy greens. As long as you don't scalp the plant, lean a foliage so it can photosynthesize and feed the roots. You can harvest all season. It's an insanely efficient use of space. You don't have to wait until fall for a payoff. Down in tropical or subtropical zones, these guys act as perennials, rooting wherever the vine touches the dirt and expanding the patch automatically. Up north, the frost will kill the top, but you still get a massive haul from one planting. They earn their low maintenance badge not by staying small, but by being so vigorous aggressive that they choke out weeds, shade the dirt, and give you a double harvest without bat an eye. 7. Collard greens. Number 7. Collards don't always get the hype that flashy Swiss chard or trendy kale get, but when it comes to pure, rugged durability, they are top tier. These plants will laugh off a brutal summer heat wave that would turn lettuce to dust, and they'll happily sit through a winter freeze too. Because they can handle just about any weather you throw at them, you aren't wasting time ripping out dead crops and swapping in new ones when the seasons change. Keep a collard plant healthy, and it'll produce leaves for a ridiculous long time. The secret is all in the harvest. Just like kale, you never pull the whole plant. The fresh growth comes of the very top. Just snap off the massive, older leaves lower down on the stalk and leave that growing crown completely alone. As you harvest, the main stalk just gets taller and taller, and it keeps pushing out new food. You're never starting over from seed just to make a pot of soup. You just walk back out to the same exact plant. Collards also have incredibly thick, tough leaves, which keeps them from collapsing instantly when the rain stops. Dress the roots with a nice layer of mulch to hold the water and block the weeds, and you pretty much just have to casually check on them every once in a while. Since they're in the cabbage family, bugs will definitely try to eat them, but a full-grown, healthy collard is so tough it can take a little damage and keep right on going. Throwing some netting over them on J1 or just checking the undersides of the leaves weekly is infinite easier than battling a full-blown infestation later. In milder zones, they'll power through multiple seasons, and even in cold climates, they give you an insanely long runway of food. It's not a flashy, overnight success kind of vegetable. It supplies massive leaves slowly, steadily, and completely reliably. 6. Zucchini. Number 6. Zucchini. Zucchini isn't famous because it's hard to grow. It's famous because it produces so much food you literally have to start giving it away. 1 or 2 robust plants will crank out enough squash to feed an entire family for weeks on end. You don't need to till up a massive row, juggle dozens of seedlings, or give up half your yard. You just focus all your attention on a few plants. Once a zucchini plant takes off, it grows at warp speed. Those gigantic leaves completely shade out the ground underneath, which crushes weed growth and traps the moisture in the dirt. You definitely need to give it deep waterings, especially when it's throwing out flowers and sizing up fruit, but you're completely off the hook for weeding a bare patch of dirt. Stick to the bush varieties, and you won't need to string up a trellis, tie off wandering branches, or any complicated pruning. Once the blooms open, the plant and the local bees handle the heavy lifting. Now, if your yard is short on pollinators, you might have to spend a minute hand pollinating to keep the baby squashes from turning yellow and dropping off, but that's a tiny time investment. Honestly, your main responsibility is checking under those giant leaves and picking them at the right time. They grow unbelievably fast. You want to cut them when they're medium size, the skin is tender, and the seeds haven't gotten huge yet. Keeping the plant picked clean forces it to keep flowering. If you let a zucchini turn into a giant, oversized baseball bat, the plant channels massive amounts of energy in those fruits and hits the brakes on new ones. It only lives for one summer, but a single planting can put dozens of meals on your table. You don't have to fight to keep zucchini alive. The hard part is just keeping up with the harvest. The final 5 spots on this list take the whole concept of low maintenance to another level. We aren't just talking about multiple harvests in one summer anymore. Give these plants the right setup and they'll stick around for years, wake up every winter, or literally plant their own seeds for the next generation. 5. Rosemary. Number 5. Rosemary. Most garden plants die because you forgot about them. Rosemary usually dies because you loved it too much. This incredibly tough herb traces its roots back to dry, rocky, sun-baked hills of the Mediterranean. It is completely accustomed to droughts, and it absolutely despises having soggy, wet feet. The number one way people weaken rosemary isn't by skipping a watering day. It's by watering it repeatedly before the dirt even has a chance to dry out. That makes it the ultimate cheat code for a busy gardener. Once you get it established, you don't need to check on it daily. Put it in a blazing sunny spot. Make sure the dirt drains really fast, and only give it a drink when the top layer of soil is bone dry. In almost every case, let it stay a little too dry is way safer than give it too much water. It also hates heavy fertilizer. If you pump the dirt full of rich, wet nutrients, the plant gets floppy, soft, and weak. It honestly performs best when you treat it a little rough. Whenever you're cooking, just snip the soft green tips off the branches. That constant light trimming actually forces it to branch out and keep a beautiful, tight shape. Just make sure you aren't cutting way down into the hard, woody stems where there aren't any leaves. In warm weather zones, rosemary lives for years, eventually turning it a massive shrub. Your only year chore is pruning out any dead twigs and keeping it in bounds. Up north, in the bitter cold, you might have to protect it or drag it inside for the winter, but in the right climate, it is the absolute definition of zero effort gardening. Give it sun, give it sandy dirt, and step away. 4. Mint. Number 4. Mint. Mint need to stop it from going too far. A tiny piece of stem tossed in damp dirt will sprout roots instantly. Once it locks in, it sends aggressive underground runners everywhere, shooting up new plants in every direction. If you drop this directly in your garden beds, it will take over the whole area and you will spend a massive amount of time trying to control it. But put it in a pot, and that aggressive survival instinct becomes your best friend. The walls of a container trap the roots inside a clear boundary. Inside that space, mint goes absolute crazy, filling every bare spot and bouncing back instantly, no matter how aggressively you harvest it. It'll handle partial shade like a champ, thriving in spots where your fruiting veggies would just wither away. It does like moisture, but if it dries out a bit, an established plant recovers incredibly fast. When you harvest, don't just pluck off individual leaves. Grab a pair of scissors and cut the whole stem right above a pair of leaves. It will immediately branch out from that cut, making your mint bush completely lush. If you ignore it and it gets all tall, leggy, and starts flowering, just hack it back. A fresh, beautiful carpet of leaves will pop right back up super fast. In most zones, mint is our perennial. The winter might kill the tops, but the root system is sleeping underground, ready to explode again in the spring. Every couple of years, pull the clump out, chop it into sections, and boom, you have several new pots of mint for free. Mint isn't low maintenance because it's delicate. It's low maintenance because it's an absolute tank that refuses to give up. Box it in and let it gel the rest. 3. Garlic chives. Number 3. Garlic chives. The absolute beauty of garlic chives is that you get all that incredible flavor without ever having to yank the plant out of the dirt. That's exactly why a single clump can keep feeding you for years. Instead of regular tubes, these have flat blades that pack a mild garlic punch, and they shoot straight up from the base. You just give them a haircut, leaving the roots and the growing points safely undisturbed in the soil. Give it a short time, and a brand new crop of leaves will be standing right there waiting for you. Once they settle in, a clump of garlic chives will live through multiple seasons, constantly shooting out new side plants to widen the bunch. They love full sun but easily adapt to partial shade, and they aren't demanding about fertilizer. Toss a thin layer of compost on them early in the season. Water them when the dirt gets dry, and you're basically done. They are insanely cold-hardy too. Winter frost will knock the green leaves out, but the roots just go dormant beneath the soil, waking right back up when spring hits. You never have to start over from seeds. When you're ready to cook, just snip them a few inches above the dirt and completely avoid pulling them up. The plant taps into the energy stored in the roots and immediately starts regenerating. Late in the summer, they'll shoot up clusters of gorgeous white star-shaped flowers that attract pollinators and are completely edible. After a few years, the clump will get pretty jammed together. All you do is dig it up, chop it into a few smaller sections, and replant them. Do that one chore every few years, and you'll keep them growing vigorously. That is pretty much the entire checklist. Plant them, chop the leaves, divide them eventually, and let the roots do all the work year after year. 2. Egyptian walking onions. Number 2. Egyptian walking onions. These guys don't just grow back. They plant the next generation all by themselves. Standard onions give you one bulb underground. And that's it. But these guys, send a tall stalk and right at the very top. As those top bulbs get heavy, they literally drag the stalk down to the dirt. The second they touch out roots and start a brand new line, year by year, the patch just slowly marches across the garden bed, hence the name walking onion. What puts them so high on this list isn't just that they survive blistering cold or live forever. It's that they handle the hardest parts of gardening for you. You don't have to sit there, meticulous saving seeds, starting trays, or tilling up the bed to replant every spring. Just let those top sets hit the dirt, and the plant expands its territory completely on its own. Plus, the whole plant is edible. You can slice the green stalks like scallions, dig up the underground bulbs for a sharp, punchy onion flavor, or grab the little top bulbs for pickling or replanting somewhere else. Give them sunshine and dirt that drains well, and once they're locked in, they will thrive on total neglect way better than your average onion. A brutal winter might damage the top greens, but they kick right back into gear when it warms up. Your biggest chore isn't keeping them alive, playing traffic cop to decide where they go. If you want to keep them contained, just snap off the top sets before they bend over. If you want a bigger patch, just step back and let the natural process happen. It's essentially a self-replicating garden. Put the original plant in the dirt once and let it manage its own future. 1. Asparagus. Asparagus definitely isn't the crop for the impatient, but it holds the absolute record for keeping you fed the longest without ever replanting. The first couple of years are all about patience. When you bury those asparagus crowns, you have to resist the urge to harvest too heavily. The plant needs that time to drive a deep, massive root system in the earth and stockpile energy underground. You'll likely be waiting 2 to 3 years before you can kick off a proper, full-scale harvesting season. But that is the hardest part. Once Asparagus bed is locked in. Fresh spears will pun every single spring for fin-fine to tune-fine years. That deep perennial root system operates almost like clockwork. To pull that off, though, you absolutely have to nail the location on J1. You need blasting sun, deep dirt, plenty of compost, and absolute zero standing water. Pick a spot where it will never get hit by a shovel or a tiller, because those roots are moving in permanently. Once it's established, the maintenance is incredibly lazy. Throw down some mulch to choke out the weeds and keep the soil damp. Go out in the spring and snap off your spears for the proper window. After that, step back and let the remaining spears grow out into massive, delicate fern-like foliage. Those giant ferns soak up the summer sun, charging the underground batteries for next year's crop. When the freezing weather hits and the ferns turn yellow and die naturally, all you do is grab some shears and chop away the dead stuff. That is your entire yearly routine. Mulch it, pick it, let it recover, and chop it down in winter. Asparagus takes the #1 spot because it perfectly captures what it means to plant once and harvest forever. Put the elbow grease into building an asparagus bed today, and that exact same patch of dirt will put food on your table for decades. Build a low garden doesn't mean just abandoning your plants. It's about making incredibly smart decisions right from the start. When you choose plants that are naturally tough, bounce back fast from a harvest, and run off the same root system year after year, you completely eliminate the grinding cycle of starting over. Some just need to hit the dirt once a spring, and they'll feed you for weeks. Some regenerate just days after you take a pair of scissors to them. Others go completely dormant under the cold and pop back up by them in the spring. And the absolute best ones just need to be planted right on J1, and they'll keep producing for years. That is the true genius of these fin-fine crops. They don't let you off the hook completely, but they make every hour you spend caring for them compound into massive, long-term results. Instead of wasting all your time ripping out dead roots and sowing fresh seeds, you get to skip straight to harvesting what the garden is already making. You just pick a few solid crops, give them a good home, and help them out a little at the start. As time rolls on, the garden actually demands less effort while continuously handing you fresh food. Planting once isn't just a lazy hack. It's how you take the sweat you invest today and turn it into harvests that last well in the future.